Okay, so welcome everyone. Thanks for joining. Um, Welcome to the Military Options in College Education session of the college conference. So just a few things tonight. I'm calling Courtney, by the way. I'm the high school counselor at International School, and I'll be monitoring the chat. So tonight, just one thing. If you have a question for Troy, please try to get my slide to move. Please just drop it in the chat and Troy will answer them at the end of his presentation. So you just hit that little chat button that you see there on the screen. Okay. So I'd like to introduce you all to Troy Niehaus, and he is going to take over. So I'm going to stop sharing here.
Thank you, Colleen. I appreciate it. Hopefully everyone can hear me. I would love for everyone to put in the chat what year your student is, if you are the student or the parent, what year your student is in high school. That will certainly help me give you a little bit of a background. I moonlight with a company called Varsity Student Institute, and we assist high school students with the college selection and application process. And I've been doing this for about 7 years or so, maybe 8. And I work with a lot of students that are interested in attending college for ROTC or attending one of the 5 federal service academies. And so that's what I will speak to you about today. The application process for ROTC and the academies is quite different than normal colleges. And it's of course good to know about the different options and how they compare. So I'm going to quickly see. I see 2 juniors. That's fantastic. All right. Let me know on the others. That would be super helpful. But let me start by sharing my screen. And let's see here. Hopefully everyone can see that. Colleen, can you see that?
I can. And it looks like we have 3 juniors in here.
3 juniors. All right, perfect. So now's a great time to learn. So let's get started. There are, first of all, I'll talk about the academies. There are 5 federal service. Well, I'll get into ROTC, but there are 5 federal service academies. The big 3, which are Air Force, West Point, the Military Academy, and the Naval Academy. Those all fall under the Department of Defense. And then the Coast Guard Academy and the Merchant Marine Academy. And so I'll speak to all of those. First and foremost, let's start with the locations. The Air Force Academy tends to be super popular because it's the only academy of the 5 that's located on the West Coast. That is in Colorado Springs, Colorado. The Naval Academy is in Annapolis, Maryland. West Point, the Military Academy, is in West Point, New York, right off the Hudson River. Kings Point, the Merchant Marine Academy, is located in Kings Point, New York. And finally, the Coast Guard Academy is in New London, Connecticut. So, from a school size perspective, they're all relatively small schools compared to what's out there in terms of options for colleges and universities. But certainly the United States Military Academy, the Merchant Marine Academy, the Coast Guard Academy, have about 100 students each. So roughly 250 students per class. The big 3, Air Force, West Point, and the Naval Academy, are a little bit bigger. Still, I would say small size schools compared to, again, what's out there. Have roughly 1,000 students per class, so 4,000 total. At the academies, one thing that makes it very, very different than most colleges and universities is what I have listed here. First and foremost, they're all leadership laboratories, and the amount of leadership training that goes into a 4-year education is really tough to describe. Every single day, it's about leadership. And they look for leaders in high school that are also applying to the academies. So they want to see someone who's, you know, been the leader of a club or leader of a team, leader in the community. That's what they look for. And a big part of being a leader is your character. You know, what kind of character do you have? Do you value qualities of integrity and honesty and good morals and things of that nature? Um, the other thing is the academies are highly competitive, not only to get in, but once you're there, right? And so it's definitely a highly competitive environment. And if that's not who you are as a person, then, you know, to me, that would be a reason to say don't go to the academies if you're not super competitive, because they are certainly. First and foremost, it's about service. And so, you know, when you go to the academies, the goal is to educate you, and then you end up spending time in service to the nation, whether it's in the reserves or on active duty. And I'll get into that a little bit more. There's a lot of advanced training with respect to the service academies. Give you a little bit of background on myself, by the way. I am a graduate of the United States Air Force Academy, personally. I spent about 10 years on active duty. I was a special agent in the Air Force, kind of like the Air Force's FBI. I also spent 3 years in the intelligence field. And while I was in, they paid for my master's degree. And so I've got advanced training down there. A huge number of officers end up getting their advanced degrees. You can also go out there and become a lawyer, become a doctor, and a lot of other options. One of the clear advantages of going to a military academy, one of the 5 federal service academies, is you graduate with a guaranteed job. There aren't very many universities, if at all, can guarantee that. So want to make sure to highlight that, much more than an education. Now, there are 3 components that the academies look for, and it's what we call the whole person concept. So you not only have to be sharp academically, but you got to be physically fit. And then you also have to have good qualities of character and integrity. And so I'll talk a little bit about those 3. From an academic perspective, usually it's the top 1% of your class. So when you graduate the academy, you're going to graduate with the Bachelor of Science degree, no matter what you major in. When I was at the Air Force Academy, I actually majored in Russian area studies, and I minored in the Russian language, which at most universities will be a Bachelor of Arts. But because all of the academies are core science, technology, math, STEM type programs, you're going to graduate with a Bachelor of Science. Now, all of the academies are consistently ranked in the top publications. I highlighted Forbes and U.S. News and World Report, the Princeton Review as a couple. And again, because of the smaller size of the schools, they have a very low student to faculty ratio, which is an advantage. Now, from an athletic perspective, you know, you got to be physically fit. The military standards for physical fitness are high, and you know you have mandatory athletic tests to take. In fact, it's part of the application process. So all students are athletes, and many of these students, a high percentage of students that apply, play varsity sports at the high school level. It's fully integrated into the curriculum, so you either have to play sport at the academy or do intramurals. It's not an option not to be involved. So you need to be physically fit. They also have club level sports. I actually played racquetball when I was at the Air Force Academy, which was a sport where we competed against other colleges and universities, and we also competed in local, city, and state and national level tournaments. Now, there's also the NCAA level to play sports, and the big 3 are considered at the D1 NCAA Division I level, and the Coast Guard Academy and the Merchant Marine Academy are all at the Division III NCAA level. Let's keep chatting. So military is that 3rd component, right? So you're going to go there. You're mandatory to wear a uniform. You have to understand the customs and courtesies, know how to salute, know how to wear the uniform properly. You're in the military, frankly. Even if you're in the school for a period of 4 years, you're wearing a uniform every single day. You take leadership and character development classes, and at the end of the day, you're going to take a commission, and you're going to have to take an oath to the Constitution and as a position as an officer in that branch of service. And so it's not just going there for academics. There is a cost and a commitment. Now, when you apply, your entire education is going to be paid for. Entire education. So, but with that, you've got a commitment to serve, right? And so minimum commitment when attending the academies is a 5 years. If you decide to do particular roles like being a pilot or going to med school or going to law school, you're going to have to serve some additional time. The academy paid for my master's degree in management, and I ended up having to serve an extra 2 years myself. So for you juniors out there, you've missed the summer seminar deadline for the Air Force Academy and likely for the Naval Academy, but there might still be an option for West Point, the military academy. They offer 2 to 3 sessions per year. These were some old dates that I've got on here. I would just recommend going to the Air Force Academy or West Point or the Naval Academy site. Coast Guard Academy and Merchant Marine Academy don't always do the summer seminars, but check the sites to see if they offer them. Typically, they will all be in the summer between your junior and senior year. Super competitive to apply. So if there's any sophomores or freshmen on the call, be thinking about it now. But if you don't get into a summer seminar program, don't be discouraged. There's only a few hundred slots, and so they're super competitive. But it's a great opportunity to earn a firsthand experience into what it might be like to be at one of the academies. So definitely encourage you to apply that. Now, the application process is very, very competitive, right? And it's very different than what you're going to see at other colleges and universities. There are interviews, there are essays, there are letter of recommendations, teacher evaluations. You got to do a physical fitness test, and you got to do a medical exam. This is all part of it. So very, very involved. In addition to that, you have to have a congressional nomination to get accepted to one of the academies. If you don't have that, it's a non-starter. The only one of the 5 Federal Service Academies that does not require a nomination is the Coast Guard Academy. So just to keep that in mind. The nomination process, you can get a nomination from the vice president if you're military affiliated. So if your parents served, you might have the opportunity to get a presidential nomination, but both the president and vice president are limited. Your best options are with your congressman. So I've got Congressman Kilmer here, who is in the district, which represents the Kitsap Peninsula, but I know a lot of you are on the east side. So Congressman Smith, Congresswoman Del Bene, and many others. Look up, find out who your congressperson is, and understand when their deadlines are. Typically, deadlines are going to be October, maybe November of your senior year to apply for a nomination. But that's a huge part of the process. And so without that, you're not even going to be offered an opportunity to get into one of the academies, except for Coast Guard. So keep that in mind. Very, very competitive. So for the academies, you're going to have at least a 3.85. I've seen some students with less than that get in, but then they rank really high on the athletic or extracurricular activity front. So generally that falls into really high, 3.85, 3.9. I've seen people with 4.0s not get in. So it's oftentimes who you're competing against for those coveted spots. Generally, top 10% of your high school graduating class should definitely be in the National Honor Society. Most students who apply have some kind of varsity letter and are very active in their community and in clubs. And you're going to need to score probably around 650, 700 or so on each your math and your verbal on your SAT, or a composite score of at least 30 on the ACT. So be preparing for that. How do they differ? So size of the school is one when you look at Merchant Marine Academy or the Coast Guard Academy. And there are fewer majors as well, and most of those are STEM focused, whereas the larger 3 schools, Air Force, West Point, and Naval Academy, are larger, and they're great liberal arts programs. So you can major in anything from economics to math to engineering. I was a Russian area studies major, as I had mentioned. And then, of course, the careers, right? So, I would want you to look at the academies as what do you want to do when you graduate, right? So what kind of career do you want to have? If you want to fly, your best options are going to be Air Force, followed by Navy. If you want to serve on ships, Coast Guard or Navy. If you want to be in the infantry, obviously Army, right? There's a Marine Corps option as well. If you go to the Naval Academy. So just that's kind of really how they differ. The Air Force Academy, again, the only one located on the West Coast. Again, a lot of unique options. They've got a free fall parachute program. They've got a soaring and a power flight program. The number one career for Air Force Academy graduates is becoming a pilot, about 500 per year of 1,000 graduating class. They do compete in the Mountain West and in the Western Athletic Conference in Division I, boxing and other areas of opportunity at the Air Force Academy. The Military Academy in New York, founded in 1802. They've actually had two presidents that have graduated from West Point. 3 Heisman Trophy winners as well. A significant number of majors and minors. And field training programs and so on. Think of, again, Army focused. And the United States Naval Academy. Let's see here. Did it skip the slide? Let's see here. 22. It looks like it's got a duplicate of slides. So, very similar. The Naval Academy, again, one of the older institutions, and much with a Navy flair. So those are the academy options. Now, if you're not as competitive or maybe don't quite have the academics, I would certainly recommend ROTC. So ROTC is another opportunity to earn a college degree and at the same time earn a commission in a particular branch of the military.
Troy.
Yes.
I do not see your.
Yeah, I've taken the slides down.
Oh, okay.
So
sorry, just wanted to make sure.
It's okay. I finished through the slides and didn't have any, so I'm just talking about ROTC.
Okay, great.
ROTC is a great environment for someone who wants to attend and have a normal college experience, because going to any of the 5 federal service academies is not a normal college experience versus going to, say, UW, taking Air Force or Army or Navy ROTC. It's a class, just like biology, and then you have a biology lab. Well, ROTC is a class, and then you have a lab version of it where you learn to march and wear the uniform and understand the customs and courtesies, right? And so the commitment graduating through ROTC is only a 4-year commitment versus a 5 for one of the service academies. And so, again, if maybe your academic resume, your athletics, extracurriculars are not as up to par as maybe what we traditionally would expect to get into one of the competitive academies, it's still a great way to become a commission. Doesn't mean you're going to be less of an officer. I've seen fantastic officers graduate through ROTC, and I've seen crappy officers graduate for the academy. So it's really what you make of it. If you want a traditional college experience, go ROTC. If you want the ultra uber competitive environment, then and you can get into the academies, then do that. It's really a 24/7 kind of a competitive atmosphere. So those are the differences between ROTC and the academies. The other thing that I'll mention, the Merchant Marine Academy is very unique because you can graduate and not be required to go on to active duty. You could instead accept a reserve commission in the Navy and go out into the Merchant Marine Force, graduating with an actual Coast Guard license or Merchant Marine license, excuse me. So another unique opportunity. You can go to any branch of service while if you would choose to attend the Merchant Marine Academy versus one of the others. It's much more competitive if you wanted to cross commission. So, for example, graduate from Air Force, if I wanted to be a Navy officer, then it's much more selective. It's not an automatic thing versus attending the Merchant Marine Academy where you can get any choice or not serve active duty at all. So I'll pause there. I'll leave it for questions, Colleen, and let you lead the way there.
Yeah. It looks like Leonardo here, he's a junior, had his first question was, if you were to enroll in the ROTC or some other program similar to it, would you strongly recommend applying to the academy when you graduate? He said, I'm not too sure if I'm a big competitor, especially in becoming a leader.
So no, go if you know that you don't really want to go to an academy, and let me make sure I understand this question. You don't need to apply to the academies to apply to ROTC. Now, if you do want to go to the academy, you want to give it a chance, apply to both, right? And every academy applicant I work with, I also have applied to ROTC because it's super competitive to get into the academies. And as I said, I've seen a 4.0 student not get in. And so, it's a little bit more involved in terms of the application process, but some of the things overlap. So my recommendation for anyone is, unless you're certain you don't want to go to the academy, apply to both. Apply to both, see what you get back, where you get accepted, and then make your choice, your decision after that.
Right. And then he was saying, the same person was saying he was thinking of becoming a pilot and was leaning towards the Air Force. A few years ago, he joined an organization called CAP, which was an extended auxiliary of the Air Force.
Civil Air Patrol, yep.
And then he said, would that help my chances at all with getting into any of the military academies, especially with the Air Force Academy?
Yeah, for sure. Having that experience will separate you from others who don't. So definitely recommend things like Civil Air Patrol, other, Boys and Girls State, National Honor Society. The more accolades, the more involvement, the better, because it helps to separate you and adds that little bit of extra touch onto your resume.
Another question, and I hope it's do you have to commit, and do you mean that after college?
Yeah, so there is no commitment until you start your junior year of college, both for ROTC and the academies. So that's great. If you get into the Air Force Academy and you go for a year or two and you decide it's not for you, you can quit and not have any commitment to the military. However, once you sign on as a junior in either ROTC or academy, there is a commitment. Either you got to pay it back or you got to serve some time.
Right. And then how difficult would you say getting into the ROTC is?
If you've got a 3.5 or better, I think you have a great chance. And there's different levels of ROTC scholarships as well, right? So there are some scholarship opportunities depending on how qualified you are, where you get the entire school paid for, even if it's a private school that costs $70,000 a year. There's some ROTC scholarships that only offer in-state rates, right? So depends again how qualified you are. If you've got a 3.5 or better and you've got a resume that shows that you've been involved in the community, in clubs and in sports, then that's a pretty good thing.
Next question is, how many years service commitment is needed for a medical student once they sign in?
It varies from year to year, but typically I've seen it 9 to 10 year commitment after med school. They've not only paid, especially if you go to the academies, they not only paid 4 years of your academy, all of that college, which in some cases you can tally up to close to $500,000. That's how expensive and how much value you're getting. But then tack on med school, which is pretty expensive. So usually I've seen it there, but it changes from year to year, and I'd have to check, and it's pretty easy to do a Google search and see what the commitment would be. By the way, before everyone goes, I'll throw my in the chat my email. Feel free to send me an email, and if you have any questions and and I'm happy to follow up with any of you. I do work with a handful of students every year, and if anyone would like me to help work with them in this process, I definitely do that. So feel free to get back to me with any questions you might have.
Do we have one more? I saw someone typing. I will say, Troy, if I can jump in here, from the counselor's perspective, when applying, my biggest advice is just to know the application process, because it, like you were saying, it is a very involved process, and making sure you know your due dates and what you need is really important.
That's right.
Especially, pardon?
I said, you're spot on.
Yeah,
I've seen
just
people, miss deadlines and not get certain teacher evaluations done, or miss their physical fitness test, and yeah, it's and by the way, you're doing this in the fall semester of your senior year when you're pretty busy with your last year. So, and you're also applying hopefully to other colleges and universities, and it takes a toll, right? So you're trying to maintain great grades and go through this entire process, and most of the applicants are playing some sports, and so I don't envy I don't envy the applicants. It's a very busy time, so you got to stay on top of it.
yeah. Looks like we might have one more question coming.
You see someone typing?
I do. So what would you say is the most important, is what is most important applying for ROTC or an academy?
Goodness gracious. Clearly, academics is the most important thing. But if you've got a 3.85 and you don't play sports and have zero involvement in clubs or extracurricular activities, then that is not going to help you. So you definitely need the whole person concept. But first and foremost, they look at your grades, right? You're competing not only in the academy application process, but you're competing for a nomination. And by the way, when you apply for a nomination, absolutely apply to your congressman and apply to both senators. Okay. Now, both senators do not do in-person interviews because I think everyone in the state of Washington is applying for a nomination from Senator Murray or Senator Cantwell. But your congressperson does do personal interviews, and that is super important as well. I've never had anyone, knock on wood, in the 8 years that I've worked with students. And by the way, I was also in the reserves in the Air Force when I left active duty, and my job was a liaison officer for the academy. So I actually sat on Governor Inslee's panel when he was a congressman for 6 years. I've chaired Congresswoman Del Benny's panel. I've chaired Congressman Kilmer's panel. I've sat on both Senator Murray and Senator Cantwell's panels. And so I know what they ask you. I know how to be prepared for those things. If you're applying for a nomination, your best opportunity for a nomination is at the congressional level. So be prepared for that as well.
Yeah, it looks like Leonardo was saying he's thinking more of a balance is important, but academics are most likely most important. That's what it sounds like.
Yep.
Yeah. Looks like we might have one last question coming in.
How should we contact our senator or congressperson? So each senator and your congressperson has a website. And so you can Google it or just go, what I would Google is military or Academy nomination, and then whoever, Senator Murray, Academy nomination, Senator Cantwell, Academy nomination, Congresswoman Del Bene, right? And it'll pull up the site, and then they will list the application process for a nomination. They'll list all the requirements. They'll list the due dates. Again, the due dates are going to end up being in October, generally the late October, mid-October, maybe very early November timeframe. But don't sit on it, right? Because you're going to need letters of recommendation and a bunch of other things as a part of that process. So you can go there now, check it out. I doubt they might still have some of the they've obviously issued or are in the process of issuing appointments to the academies now, and the nominations have already been given out. So it may still be the this year's version, right, in terms of dates, but that's the best way to find out.
Okay.
All right.
Great.
Left my email there. Please don't hesitate. Reach out to me. Send me an email. Happy to follow up with another conversation or any questions you might have. But I wish you all good luck in your journey. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you.